When matchmakers disregard fighting experience altogether, you get some strange outcomes, from forcing a fighter to debut against a former champion to fighting a veteran striker. In this video, we'll take a look at serious matchmaking errors of the UFC. CM Punk versus Mickey Gall. Okay, what the heck was this one? When Phil Brooks, better known as CM Punk, hopped onto the UFC train, he did so with relatively no training or martial arts background, and on top of that, at an older age than most people in the promotion. However, Dana let CM Punk try his hand at MMA because he knew it would make the former WWE star happy. That, or he just knew this would generate money if Punk found any success, much like Brock Lesnar. Regardless of what Dana had thought, fans got to witness one of the worst beatings in the history of the sport. Punk, a white belt in BJJ, was matched against a 24-year-old Mickey Gall, who has a brown belt in BJJ. Never minding the skill gap, Punk came out of the gate like it was a foot race and ran into Gall's takedown at about 20 miles per hour. Gall, who won his only 2 previous professional matches by way of rear naked choke, figured that he'd make that his thing. He passed Punk's guard easier than grappling with a dummy opponent and found himself in a favorable position. From there, he proceeded to apply a rear naked choke. CM Punk actually did pretty well in defending it, but the skill discrepancy was too much, and the rad story that would have been Punk winning a UFC fight never materialized. Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir. Yeah, Brock was a great collegiate wrestler and is more sturdier than a bank's vault, but fighting Frank Mir after just one professional fight may have been a bit of a mismatch. Though Lesnar was a bit successful in the early goings of this fight, Mir's ground game simply proved too much later on. He's made a career out of getting hurt and then brutally submitting his opponents, and Mir did some of that snazzy grappling stuff by wrapping up one of Lesnar's legs. Mir locked in a knee bar and began twisting Lesnar's leg like a pretzel. With nothing left to do, Brock tapped out in the most begrudging way possible, like a percussionist hitting quarter notes. Those taps could have counted as significant strikes. Valentina Shevchenko versus Priscilla Cachoeira. It's not hard to tell that Valentina Shevchenko is one of the best fighters, man or woman, in the UFC. Losing a split decision against Amanda Nunes shouldn't drop anyone's stock at all, but the UFC decided to give Shevchenko a UFC newcomer as a rebound fight. Enter Priscilla Cachoeira. She was undefeated leading up to the bout, but she wasn't fighting UFC caliber opponents, let alone facing the most elite striker in Bullet. However, the matchmaker showed that everyone makes mistakes here, and we got one of the most violent beatdowns as a result of that. Thankfully, we have referees to save the fighters, right? Well, Mario Yamazaki let Cachoeira fight on, which led to her absorbing a total of 230 unanswered strikes while she only landed 3. Shevchenko also had nearly 9 minutes of control time. When quizzed about the fight, Yamazaki said he was allowing Priscilla to be a warrior, but this was just a bad performance on his part. Mario Yamazaki, you had a good run. James Toney versus Randy Couture. James Toney didn't belong in front of Randy Couture in the octagon the same way Randy wouldn't belong in front of Toney in the boxing ring. Toney has had an illustrious career in boxing, a sport that doesn't necessarily require an athlete to know how to defend a low single-leg takedown or leg kicks for that matter. Couture was a champion in a sport that incorporated takedowns, elbow strikes, submissions, and more. So it was pretty easy to know where to put your money on this one. It took Randy a little more than 10 seconds to not want to stand with Toney anymore, and he dove at his lead leg, took him down, and secured mount position easier than he even expected. The natural Couture locked in an arm triangle choke on the pugilist, and to be fair, Toney tried to mount a defense, but it was clearly not good enough to see the end of the round, not even close. But he did okay for someone whose career didn't involve him defending head and arm chokes. James Toney had no success at all, and hey, that was to be expected. Patrick Cummins versus Daniel Cormier. How does one get a fight against Daniel Cormier after beating a guy riding an 8-fight losing streak, all of those being finishes? Oh well, someone at UFC Matchmaking screwed up big time by matching Patrick against DC. When Rashad Evans pulled out of his bout against Cormier, he wasn't too stoked that he cut weight for nothing. He simply wanted to fight someone, and Patrick put his name forward. Making bad decisions is one thing, but fighting Cormier on 1 week's notice can be chalked up as a mistake. Patrick Cummins wanted his shot though. He used to train with Cormier, made some noise on social media and talked his trash, to which Dana White obliged by ringing up Cummins' manager while he was working a drive-thru at a coffee shop. Was he fired for this? Yes. Did he get a shot against DC? A much more exciting yes. We believe that Cummins' former coffee shop manager wished on a shooting star that he would lose his UFC debut. That, or Daniel Cormier is one of the best fighters to walk this earth. Either one is a solid option. Cummins was TKO'd in just over a minute, but went on to fight in the UFC for an additional 12 bouts. He lost the debut, but won a career. Don't forget to follow Sportskeeda MMA on all our social media platforms.